plurality probably that might go with whoever reaches the tipping point. But I also think it's important for people who are leading parties and organizing parties to address the real needs of what's going on. When you have 40% of the population below the poverty line, another 20% in what's called near poverty, who, if inflation goes up enough, they could very quickly fall below the new poverty line. Those people are going to care less about Article 2, and whether legislation is going to be based on Islamic values or not, and how do you define that, and more about who is running for parliament or wants to come into government with a plan that will really help me raise my economic position. So if you want to organize a party that wins in the elections, organize a party that will win people's hearts and minds, not a party that will fearmonger. Those will certainly get a lot of votes as well. But I think the party that will ultimately be successful, especially as people's political consciousness wakes up in the country, I think the party that goes out and really listens to what people want, understands what they want, and comes up with a realistic, believable plan for how to address it, and then communicates that, that's the party, or those are the parties that in the long term are going to win majorities. A lot of what has been happening now is still kind of the knee-jerk reaction to, oh, we now found all these freedoms, how do we deal with that? How do we educate people on political processes and democracy and values and so on? But the next election, I don't think is going to be completely, truly representative. The one after that also maybe not. But if you build for the long term, I think you will get to a point where there is no fear that some minority is going to take over because the political system truly responds to people's needs, or so we hope.
Well, I'd say, and after the elections, changing of the style of governance, of not seeing a job in parliament as a way to accrue power and wealth, to get yourself in the whatever corporation there is, the military or civilian corporations. It's changing the governance, and look at the U.S. Congress in the United States. That doesn't work particularly well either. So it's changing that style of governance that is certainly endemic to the Egyptian parliament at the moment. That's a long process of changing that, but it's about trying to bring these economic changes and political changes as opposed to I'm now in parliament so I can get more wealth or power surrounding myself.
So, question?
Oh, yes, hi. I was wondering about specifically the Egyptian economy. The unfortunate reality is that corporations tend to run the world, not just Egypt, not just the United States. They tend to dominate fiscal policy. I mean, in the United States right now, we're kind of in a Victorian era in terms of our economy. The wealth disparity is so large. And I guess, how do you see Egypt moving out of that, if it's at all possible? And what are the next steps for whatever government comes into power? And do you think that whatever government does come into power will take Egypt out of poverty and take these people out who are suffering so much?
Well, I think that's really going to be the hardest point, that this is from independence on, the 1950s forward, this has been such a difficult process. But this is my more idealistic view, and I see this in the United States too, of breaking up some of those corporations, of having more of a distribution of wealth. This is my own particular idealistic view. I don't like it in the United States either, this gradation, these vast gradations of wealth. But it's about, projects that you've been talking about. It's about being creative about projects of, whether it's the development corridor, or it's about green energy, or it's about trying to use the domestic labor and domestic sources better than always importing something from outside, that globalization model. But it's also, as you said, connecting to Brazil, connecting to China, connecting to the groups that are buying the products. But that takes a great deal of creativity. And it's about those elites that are pushing back, whether in the military or in the kind of capitalist cronies that have built up in the last 10 and 15 years. That's going to be a hard fight to push back against those. And I don't have all the answers for that, unfortunately.
There's also something unique here that we're seeing historically. I don't think there's ever